At my rehearsal dinner, I saw the one woman Derek swore was out of his life. She had a place card. I took off my ring and said, "The wedding is over." Derek followed me into the hallway. Seconds later, his hand was in my hair, pulling me backward while I screamed. My mother came running. She saw my torn dress strap, looked straight at Derek, then whispered to me, "Go back inside and apologize. Do you know how much this wedding cost?" I left anyway. But before I reached my car, the venue manager stopped me. He was holding a tablet. "Lena, there's something from earlier today you need to see." Derek heard him, and for the first time all night, he looked scared. "Don't show her that." That was when I realized Savannah wasn't the biggest secret waiting for me inside that building. My name is Lena Foster. I'm 33. Welcome to Before She Spoke Stories. 22 hours before I was supposed to marry Derek Vaughn, I was standing inside our rehearsal dinner trying to convince myself I was finally safe. We had been together 4 years, engaged for 18 months, and after one terrible stretch 8 months earlier, we had done counseling, rebuilt trust, and planned a wedding for 160 people. I genuinely believed the hardest part of our relationship was behind us. I was wrong. 8 months earlier, I found messages between Derek and his coworker, Savannah Pierce. Nothing explicit enough for him to admit everything, but intimate enough that I packed a bag. He begged me to stay. He called it an emotional affair and swore it had never become physical. Then he made one promise repeatedly: "Savannah is completely out of my life." That promise was one of the reasons I agreed to keep planning the wedding. My mother, Colleen, loved the wedding almost more than I did. Whenever I mentioned stress, she reminded me how many deposits were already paid: the venue, flowers, catering, photographer. My stepfather, Martin, had contributed generously, and Mom treated every dollar like another reason nothing could go wrong. Once, I joked that Derek and I should have eloped. Mom didn't laugh. "Don't say things like that after everything we've spent." At rehearsal dinner, Derek barely put his phone down. He checked it during speeches. Under the table. Even while my bridesmaids were taking pictures. His brother Nolan disappeared from the room twice. Then venue coordinator Elise approached Derek and quietly said, "Everything from the earlier meeting is handled." Derek immediately interrupted her. "We'll talk tomorrow." I asked what meeting. He kissed my cheek. "Wedding logistics. Nothing you need to worry about." Around 7:15, the doors opened. Savannah walked in beside one of Derek's old coworkers. For a second, I wondered if I had mistaken her. Then she turned toward me. Same face, same voice, same woman whose name had nearly ended my engagement 8 months earlier. But what scared me wasn't that she had shown up. She wasn't standing awkwardly near the entrance. A server walked her directly to a seat. I crossed the room before I could talk myself out of it. Savannah's name was printed on a place card beside the plate. Not handwritten. Not added at the last second. Printed with the rest of ours. I turned to Derek. "Who invited her?" he said. "Maybe Nolan." Nolan heard him. His expression changed. "Don't put that on me." Then Savannah looked straight at me and said, "Derek told me you knew." Would you have stayed long enough to hear the explanation or walked out the moment you saw that place card? Share your answer and subscribe to Before She Spoke Stories. I looked at Savannah. Knew what? She opened her mouth, then looked at Derek. He stepped between us. "This is not the place." I almost laughed. "You brought her to my rehearsal dinner, Derek. Apparently this is exactly the place." He lowered his voice. "Please don't do this tonight." That sentence bothered me. Not she shouldn't be here, not I can explain. Just, don't do this tonight. Something inside me became very calm. I slid the engagement ring off my finger and placed it beside Derek's plate. He stared at it. I said, "I'm not marrying someone who keeps making me discover the truth in public." Mom stood up immediately. Guests were watching. Derek grabbed my wrist, then released it when I looked down at his hand. He whispered, You cannot leave right now. I asked, why not right now? He didn't answer. I walked into the hallway. Derek followed. At first he begged me to stop. Then his voice changed. You're not humiliating me like this. I kept walking. I heard my name once. Then pain ripped across my scalp. His hand was tangled in my hair, pulling me backward toward the private dining room. My knees hit the carpet. I screamed. A server rounded the corner. Only then did Derek let go. Mom came running into the hallway. For 1 second I thought she was coming to me. She saw my torn dress strap, my shaking hands. Derek standing behind me. I said. He dragged me by my hair. Mom looked toward the dining room doors, then leaned close. Go back inside and apologize. Do you know how much this wedding has cost us? I stared at her. Then I walked away. I didn't know yet that someone inside that venue had already saved the part of the night Derek was most afraid I would see. My stepfather Martin caught up with me near the lobby. He looked shaken, but his first words were, go home separately. Sleep. We can fix this tomorrow. I asked him what exactly he thought could be fixed. Derek dragging me? Savannah being invited? My mother asking me to apologize? Martin rubbed his forehead. Just don't make a permanent decision tonight. Nobody around me seemed willing to say the obvious words, cancel the wedding. I kept walking toward the parking lot. Mom followed me far enough to call after me. If you leave now, don't expect me to explain this to 160 people. I turned around. Then tell them the truth. She looked horrified. Not because Derek had hurt me, because I had suggested other people might find out. Tessa reached me a second later and put my purse into my hands. Keep walking, she said. So I did. I had almost reached Tessa's car when someone called my name. It was Andre Benson, the venue's security manager. He held a tablet against his chest. Ms. Foster, we have the hallway incident on camera. For the first time all night, I felt something close to relief. Then Andre glanced toward the building. There's something else you may want preserved. I asked what. He turned the screen toward me. The timestamp read, 3:07 p.m. The rehearsal dinner started at 6:30. But the footage showed Derek entering the venue more than 3 hours earlier. Savannah walked in beside him. They weren't holding hands. They weren't kissing. Honestly, that almost made it worse. They looked organized, like they had an appointment. A few minutes later, Nolan arrived. Then Elise led all three of them toward a private office. I stared at Andre. Nobody told me there was a meeting. Andre moved to another camera angle. A fourth person entered 20 minutes later. A man in a charcoal suit carrying a leather portfolio. Derek met him personally in the lobby. They shook hands. Then Derek looked around before leading him toward the same office. I didn't recognize the man. Andre checked the visitor log. His name was Gavin Mercer. Under company, someone had written, Mercer Private Capital. I asked, why was a lender at my rehearsal dinner? My phone vibrated almost continuously. Derek. Mom. Nolan. Then Derek again. 17 calls in less than an hour. I ignored all of them. Savannah sent exactly one text. I'm sorry. You were supposed to know before tonight. I read it 3 times. Supposed to know what? The meeting? Why she was invited? Or something Derek had apparently discussed with everyone except the woman he was marrying the next morning. The next morning, Savannah agreed to meet me at a coffee shop across town. I expected excuses. Instead, she said, Derek lied to you about us. My stomach tightened. She admitted their relationship had become physical once, 8 months earlier. Once was enough. Derek had looked me in the eyes during counseling and sworn it never happened. Savannah watched my face, then said, but that isn't why I was at the venue yesterday. Savannah told me Derek had personally guaranteed part of a commercial property deal that collapsed. The exposure was close to $180,000. I actually laughed because the number sounded ridiculous. Derek and I discussed credit scores, retirement contributions, even grocery budgets. He had never mentioned anything remotely like that. Savannah said the lender had started demanding a concrete repayment plan. Then she added, Derek kept telling them things would look different after the wedding. I asked what marriage had to do with a business debt that belonged to Derek. Savannah said she didn't know every detail, but Derek had repeatedly mentioned expected wedding cash, family checks, combining household finances, and possibly discussing refinancing once we were married. None of those things automatically made his debt mine, but they gave him something he desperately needed: the appearance of more financial stability. Suddenly his hallway words sounded different. You cannot leave right now. Savannah said Derek asked her to attend the private meeting because she had helped make introductions on the original property deal. She believed I knew about everything: the debt, Gavin, her involvement, even yesterday's meeting. Derek said you two had discussed all of it, she told me. I looked down at my bare ring finger. He had lied to Savannah about my knowledge, the same way he had lied to me about Savannah, and someone had still printed her a place card. I called Nolan and asked one question. Who added Savannah to the rehearsal dinner? He went quiet. Then, I did. My stomach tightened. He claimed Derek asked him to add her because she was helping with something urgent before the wedding. I asked whether he knew about their history. Nolan said no. Then I asked whether he knew about Gavin Mercer. Another pause. This one lasted longer. That was when I knew Savannah wasn't the only secret Nolan had been keeping. Nolan finally admitted he knew about the failed commercial deal. Not everything. Enough. 6 months earlier, he had lent Derek $25,000 to keep the lender from escalating. Derek promised repayment within 90 days. It never came. I asked why Nolan still helped him arrange the venue meeting. He said, because he told me after the wedding, he'd finally have enough liquidity to straighten everything out. There was that phrase again. After the wedding. Tessa helped me go through the wedding registry and guest list. Derek had repeatedly encouraged cash gifts over physical presents. At the time, I thought he was being practical. Then, I remembered him asking Martin how many relatives usually gave checks at foster family weddings. I had laughed. Now it didn't sound funny. Derek had been estimating money that hadn't even arrived yet. Not just celebrating a marriage, forecasting one. I called Mom. Did you know Derek was having financial trouble? No. Too fast. Then she added, every man has financial stress before marriage. I went silent. I hadn't told her it was business debt. I hadn't said how serious it was, but she had already framed it as ordinary pre-wedding stress. I asked, what exactly did Derek tell you? Mom sighed. Lena, please don't start digging through everything because one night went badly. That was almost an answer. Tessa remembered Mom had forwarded herself seating chart emails from my laptop weeks earlier. In that thread, I found one message from Derek to Mom, sent 11 days before the rehearsal dinner. Please don't mention the financing issue to Lena until after the wedding. She's already anxious enough. Mom replied, I understand. Just get through Saturday. I stared at those 5 words. My mother hadn't discovered his secret with me. She had been helping him keep it from me. What would you have done after finding that email? Confront Mom immediately, or keep searching before letting anyone know what you had? Share your answer and subscribe to Before She Spoke Stories. I drove to Mom's house with the email printed. She read it once and started crying. He told me it was temporary. That wasn't my question. She looked at me. I asked, why didn't you tell me? Her answer came quietly. Because I knew you'd panic and cancel. I just stared at her. So you thought I might not marry him if I knew the truth? And decided I shouldn't know? Mom whispered, I was protecting your wedding. I said, from me? Savannah sent me another set of messages. The affair hadn't restarted physically, according to her. But 2 months earlier, Derek began calling late at night. He told her he had picked the wrong life, complained that I questioned every financial decision, asked whether she still knew investors who could help him. One message read, "Sometimes I think you were the only person who understood me. 8 months of counseling hadn't ended that relationship. It had only pushed it underground." Derek finally stopped calling and sent one message. "Please meet me somewhere private. Let me explain everything." I refused private. We met at my attorney's office the next afternoon. He looked exhausted. He started by minimizing the debt, then the affair, then the hallway. "I grabbed you because you were storming out and everyone was watching." I asked, "Does pulling someone by the hair become acceptable if guests can see them leaving?" He looked down. Derek kept insisting the financial situation had nothing to do with our wedding, so I let him talk. Then I asked one question. "Why was Gavin Mercer at my venue at 3:07? Derek stopped speaking. Not slowed down. Stopped. His attorney glanced at him. I knew immediately he hadn't expected me to have that information. Finally, Derek said, "Savannah showed you something?" I answered, "No, the venue did." His face changed again. Neutral evidence was harder for him to blame. After the meeting, my attorney reviewed the latest prenup draft Derek had been pushing me to sign. The version I remembered protected premarital property and kept existing debts separate. The newest revision still looked normal at first, but one section expanded how certain joint marital funds could be used toward shared financial obligations. My attorney circled it. "This doesn't automatically make his old debt yours?" Then she looked at me. "But I would absolutely want to know why this language changed right before the wedding." My attorney compared every prenup draft. The financial language hadn't come from her. It had been added by Derek's attorney 12 days before the wedding. Derek had emailed me afterward saying, "Just cleanup language. Nothing meaningful changed." That was another lie. The revision wouldn't magically transfer his debt to me, but it could make joint money easier to use once we were married. The timing mattered more than the clause itself. Savannah forwarded an email Derek had sent Gavin. One sentence made me read it twice. "Household liquidity should improve substantially after Saturday." Saturday. Our wedding day. He mentioned expected gifts, combined cash flow, and additional options once the marriage was complete. I sat there staring at the date. Derek had discussed our wedding with his lender like it was a financial milestone. He wasn't just counting down to a ceremony, he was counting down to access. I broke down at Tessa's apartment that night, not because I wanted Derek back, because I still missed the man I thought I was marrying. "I saw Savannah's messages 8 months ago," I said. "I should have left then." Tessa shook her head. "Seeing a warning isn't agreeing to everything someone hides afterward." I wanted to believe her, but my bare ring finger kept reminding me how badly I had wanted the second chance to be real. Mom came over with a proposal. We would tell guests I had become ill and the ceremony was being postponed. No mention of Savannah, no mention of the hallway, definitely no mention of Derek's debt. "People don't need every ugly detail," she said. I asked, "Is the wedding canceled?" Mom hesitated. Postponed sounds less final. Even after everything, she was still trying to leave Derek a door back into my life. When I refused the postponement story, Mom brought up the deposits. Flowers, venue, catering, Martin's money, thousands we would never recover. Then she said, "You can't just walk away and expect everyone else to absorb the cost." I looked at her. Was the wedding your gift to me, or a contract requiring me to marry Derek? Mom opened her mouth. Nothing came out. For the first time, money couldn't make her argument sound like love. Andre called to confirm the venue had preserved every relevant recording. The hallway, the 3:07 meeting, Gavin's arrival, Savannah entering, even footage of Nolan discussing last-minute seating changes with Elise. Elise also saved the email requesting Savannah's place card. The request didn't come from Nolan originally, it came from Derek. Nolan had only forwarded it. Another small lie collapsed. And this time, nobody needed my memory to prove it. Savannah admitted Derek had contacted her more than she first revealed. Not every night. Enough. He complained about me, about money, about feeling trapped by expectations. Once he told her, "If Saturday happens, I can finally breathe." At the time, Savannah assumed he meant emotionally. After learning about Gavin, she understood it differently. So did I. The wedding wasn't only something Derek wanted, it was a deadline he believed would solve several problems at once. Elise forwarded an older email chain about venue access. Buried near the bottom was a message from Derek to Mom. "Savannah may need to stop by before dinner. Please keep Lena occupied if timing overlaps." Mom replied, "Just make sure she doesn't see her before tomorrow." I read it again. My mother knew Savannah might be inside my wedding venue. She knew seeing her could change my decision. And instead of warning me, she offered to keep me distracted. I confronted Mom with the email. She cried immediately. "I thought Savannah was only helping with the financing. Then why hide her from me?" Mom looked down. Finally, she said, "Because once you were married, you and Derek would have to work through things instead of running." I felt something inside me go completely still. She hadn't wanted me informed before the ceremony. She wanted me committed before the truth arrived. That was not optimism. That was strategy. I told Mom, "You weren't trying to save my marriage." She shook her head. "Yes, I was." "No. You were trying to get me married before I could change my mind." She stopped crying. For the first time, she had no explanation ready. Then my phone buzzed. Derek had sent one final message. "We need to talk before you tell anyone the wedding is canceled. There are things you still don't understand." I looked at Mom. Apparently, both of them still believed there was something left to negotiate. I agreed to one final conversation with Derek at my attorney's office. He looked exhausted. He said, "You're throwing away 4 years over one terrible night." I looked at him. The affair, the debt, Savannah, the prenup, my mother, dragging me by my hair. He flinched. I said, "No, I'm ending 4 years because that night finally showed me all the things you needed me not to know." Derek finally stopped pretending the wedding had nothing to do with his finances. He said he expected gifts and family checks to give us breathing room. Us. I corrected him. "You mean you." He insisted he planned to repay everything eventually. I asked why he didn't simply tell me before marriage. His answer was, "Because I knew you'd postpone." That was the same logic Mom had used. They both knew the truth could change my answer. I sent one message to every guest. "The wedding has been canceled due to serious personal circumstances. Please do not send gifts. Thank you for respecting our privacy. No accusations, no public humiliation, no details." Derek wanted me to tell people it was postponed. Mom wanted illness. I chose neither lie. Within 20 minutes, messages started arriving. I turned off my phone. For once, I didn't manage everyone else's discomfort. Canceling didn't magically return the money. Some vendors refunded portions, others couldn't. Mom sent me a spreadsheet showing exactly how much had been lost. At the bottom, she wrote, "I hope you understand what this decision cost." I stared at it for a long time, then replied, "I do, because I did. It cost thousands. Marrying Derek after everything I knew would have cost far more." The hallway footage showed exactly what happened. I walked away. Derek followed. He grabbed my hair and pulled me backward. A server appeared. Then he released me. There was no version where I fell during an argument. No version where he was trying to stop me from driving upset. What I chose to do with that evidence was handled through the appropriate process. But privately, Derek could no longer rewrite the hallway. The camera had already answered for him. Savannah sent my attorney the messages she still had. Late-night calls, financial complaints, the wrong life message, requests for investor introductions. She apologized again. I didn't forgive her instantly. She had known Derek was engaged when their relationship crossed the line, but she finally did something nobody else around him had done consistently. She stopped editing the truth to make Derek easier to live with. That mattered, even if it didn't erase anything. Nolan called and apologized for arranging the meeting and adding Savannah. Then he said, "Derek manipulated all of us." I understood why he wanted that version. It made everyone else innocent. I told him, "Derek lied, but you still helped arrange something involving my wedding without asking me." He went quiet. That was the difference I had finally learned. Being manipulated can explain a choice. It doesn't automatically erase your part in making it. Mom came to my apartment weeks later. She said, "People forgive worse things than this." I asked whether she meant Derek or herself. She started crying. Then she said, "I thought once you were married, you'd work through it." I answered, "Forgiveness is not consent to continue." She looked at me for a long time. For once, she didn't argue. "What would you have done after learning your own mother helped hide the truth? Try rebuilding the relationship slowly, or walk away completely?" Share your answer, and subscribe to Before She Spoke Stories. Months later, Mom asked me to meet for coffee. No wedding albums, no deposit spreadsheet, no excuses about embarrassment. She sat across from me and said, "I wanted the wedding so badly that I stopped asking whether you wanted the marriage." That was the first apology that actually reached me. I didn't hug her. I didn't promise everything was fixed. I just said, "That's what I needed you to understand." Trust wasn't restored, but truth had finally entered the room. For months, I kept touching the bare place on my finger where the ring used to sit. Eventually, I stopped noticing it. Derek thought dragging me back toward that dining room would keep me from leaving. Mom thought the money already spent would do the same. They were both wrong. The most expensive mistake I could have made wasn't canceling that wedding. It would have been walking down the aisle after they showed me exactly how little my choice mattered to them.